So we're going to broaden out our discussion now about the trade consequences of all this climate policy by asking a trade expert from the World Bank to give us her perspectives. Please put your hands together to welcome Daria Taglioni, who's from the World Bank Development Research Group, and she is a trade and international development specialist and has some strong feelings on this subject. Daria, welcome.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. So let me start. So we all feel that every week there is a new shock to the global economy. It's not only a perception, and some economists decided to put this in numbers, and this is the chart that this economist came up with, and it shows that indeed we are at an unprecedented time in the global economic policy in terms of uncertainty since the early 2000s, which is when this index started to be measured. Protectionism is back. We see it again from another index that is put together since the global financial crisis. And it's an index from the Global Trade Alert. It's publicly available. And what this index does is that it allows to look at measures that affect trade, and it separates the ones that are harmful to trade and the ones that are helping trade. And as you can see, there is this huge spike up on harmful policies. However, there has been an increasing trend and a more than proportional trend compared to trade facilitating measures since the global crisis. And we heard about the CBAM and carbon pricing, but in fact, if we look at these measures, a lot comes through subsidies. I circled here the two main areas of these new measures, and those are subsidies and measures that are meant to protect temporarily countries from measures that are perceived as an unfair subsidy from others. So that's where a lot of the action is right now. And so the question is, to what extent are green goals contributing to this surge in protectionism? And that's, we don't have the data. So what we did at the World Bank, what we are doing now, and we will be continuing to do, is that we partnered with Professor Emma Eisbeth at the Australian National University to actually siphon through the regulations by the G20 countries and to look at whether the new climate policies that are being put together are talking about trade. And so what we see is that there has been an increase. So we look at the regulations from this country starting in 1990. And what we see is that there is a huge exponential increase in these measures. And here are the examples for specific countries. The top line is Germany, but Germany is really exemplary of the EU. The second highest line is relative to the US. And then in the lower part, we have China, India, and Saudi Arabia. So the point is that everybody is increasing, but obviously the EU and the US are taking the lead on these new measures. And then when we look at them, we see that a lot of these measures are really still as objective, as a stated objective. It's about climate mitigation, is the lighter blue bar here on this chart. But then there is also a growing focus on competitiveness, and it's the darker blue bar. And then the third thing that we tracked is leakage, exactly. Are policies starting to worry about this problem that we just heard? And yes, they are starting to worry, increasingly so. And why it's interesting for us? Because that's where probably we see the intent to be distorting trade explicit. So the point is that that's increasing as well. Again, if we look at the type of policies, it reflects what we saw from the Global Trade Alert, that subsidies are an important instrument through which this is happening, because they are fast. They are faster than other type of policies. So my concern number one, I have two concerns that I will mention here, or questions for the future really, is that there is a lot of potential for disputes and disagreements in many areas security, jobs, techno-nationalism, but also the climate and the energy transition. And so we really need, as we heard before, to pay close attention to this linkage with trade and with what's going to happen to developing countries, to middle-income countries. So now, coming to the other side of the story, what are the firms doing? And that's the other question where we felt we didn't have enough answers, and we started doing actively work to try to understand whether firms are massively buying into this energy transition. So the answer is yes. There is an exponential growth in firm adoption of low-carbon technology. We measure that looking at mentions of low-carbon technologies in both corporate earning calls and in new job postings. And you see that there is an increasing trend. 2022, the numbers for 22, we just ran them for this presentation. They are increasingly exponentially even compared to the previous year. So 22 has been an acceleration. That matches with evidence that we know from the IEA that clean energy jobs overtook fossil fuel jobs in 2021. But what we find out, and I think that's my second concern, is that the demand for these jobs is very concentrated in few countries. Norway is one of those countries. The others here in the list are countries that ask more for this type of jobs. And there is generally a positive correlation between the income. So the richer countries are, the more they ask for these jobs. And so the fact is that we need to figure out how to expand the set of countries that are transitioning towards these countries, towards this type of technologies. And so concern number 2 is that we know that rapid low-carbon tech growth and clean energy job surges are vital to do the energy transition. And I feel that there is really right now a strong potential to catalyze innovation and so reach these tipping points that would bring prices down and making it affordable for everybody, which is the key then to expand it to other countries as well. But I think we also need to worry actively, both from the public sector and the private sector, on how to make this not concentrated in few nations, to open it up as soon as possible through price effects, through active policies of empowering countries to do that. And why? And that opens another issue, which is really this broader concern that we heard about the compatibility of this energy transition with another big emergency. So your pentalemma, I would say, that is an extra lemma. If I remember my old Greek, but it's really that we need at the same time to ensure that developing countries achieve a rapid growth and transformation, not only in the energy transition, but also in living standards. And that adds one additional factor of complexity to that we need to worry. And so the last question is really, do it alone or cooperatively? We heard that we should do it cooperatively, but I give you one more reason why we need to do it cooperatively to what has been said. And it is, so let me do just the summary, and I'll give you the last reason why that's important. And so we risk that the energy transition policies and the lopsided adoption of low-carbon technology by corporates in fewer countries will harm trade and development. But if this happens, it's going to create a negative feedback loops that will undermine the transition itself because of possible trade war, because of retaliation, but also because we wouldn't achieve these price effects that we need, right? It's very important. The energy transition right now is having inflationary effects in some respects. We need to bring those prices down. So I think that we can navigate this possibly, but we need a new system of global governance. There is a lot of skepticism on what the multilateral trading system can do. And a lot of countries, and even countries that can really move the market, think that doing it alone, the EU doing it alone, we heard it about autonomy, the US doing it alone can move the market, or eventually just making agreements between these big trade juggernauts. But in reality, the multilateral trading system is an asset that we need to use, and we need to ask how we can use it to ensure that this transition at scale maintains the benefits of globalization that we achieved for helping this difficult task. Thank you.